Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm so excited to show you how to paint these whimsical sunflowers. We're going to be working on a 12 by 16 stretch primed canvas. Now I primed it with acrylic gesso, let it dry, and I'm going to come in with my Filbert brush. I've got a number 50 here. I've got blue and purple. I'm using ultramarine blue and light purple, but you can use any blue and any purple that you want for this. So just really loosely going kind of all over the place, using my brush different ways, scumbling. Kind of looks really messy at this point, right? But it's going to look really beautiful soon. But just to show you how you can create that sky, you don't have to be too careful or too precise. Just feel really free, scumble, and then softly pull and flick. I'm going to come in from the edge here, and this is just going to give me that those darker areas, and then I'm going to leave the in-between areas for some lighter colors. And I've got some soft yellow here, a bright lemon yellow that I'm using with my mop brush. It's dry. I've got some titanium white, and I'm just going to start to dab and kind of travel around with my brush very lightly, and then create little swirls and circles in some of these larger areas. I'm going to overlap with some turquoise here pretty soon, but first I'm going to take my neon pink, touch of that yellow, and some white without washing my brush, and I'm just going to carefully brush over and enhance some of the edges of these little clouds to create a corally pinky peachy kind of a color. Okay, with a little bit more just pink now, I'm going to make this a little bit more saturated, vibrant down here. So at this point, you really don't want to be too careful about how much you're adding and where you're adding it and how it looks, because we're going to be doing a lot of blending and overlapping to create all the depth and different shades and tones and colors in this sky. So go ahead, another clean mop brush here that I've taken my turquoise and a little bit of white with. I'm going to start on the far left, slightly go over some of that blue and purple, as well as going over some of the pink and that light buttery yellow that we've got. I'm going to add a little flicks of it down in the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to finish up with a little bit more of my dusting of turquoise and white over there. And then I'm going to go into Filbert brush. I've got a little bit of phthalo blue now that I'm using just to change the blues up in the tones, and a little bit of white. So I'm using the tip of my brush where I want to create all these little details and little kind of going up and down wiggles with my brush. This is just to create all those peaks on the clouds, just to create a little bit more dimension. So look closely how I'm using my brush. It's almost like how you would create little branches. So it's the same technique that I'm using here, kind of twisting and rolling my brush around to make it look more natural and random. So you want to stay away from doing anything uniform and repetitive and creating a perfect pattern. You don't want to do that when you're working on a landscape, because, well, unless that's what you're going for, I guess it's really personal, and you know, every artist is different with what they're going for. But in this case, I want it to look really natural, so I'm doing it different everywhere and all over. And you can do that by twirling around your brush while traveling with it at the same time. Okay, so I'm going to go straight into my neon pink now, see how much I've got on the end of my brush, and I'm really going to work on the color and the saturation here. So pushing and creating those little lumps, then quickly going right into my titanium white, maybe a little bit of blue here and there too, because we're going to create different tones of purples and pinks and violets by doing this without letting your paint dry. If you're having a problem with your paint drying too quickly in between, you can take a little water bottle, put it on, set it to fine mist, and that will keep your palette and your paint from drying out too quickly. You can also turn the temperature down where you're painting. The cooler environment you're painting in, the longer it'll take for your paint to dry. So I'm taking my yellow, my blue, I want to create a green here, and I want to just kind of tap around sporadically all over and then start to blend in a little bit. I'm just going to start building up the foreground now. By doing this, I'm creating some instant shadows for when we start adding our little birdhouse and all those pretty sunflowers. Now I'm going to take a bit of white. I've got an oval mop brush that I'm using, and I've got a bit of white with my turquoise, so I'm just going to start tapping, turning my brush in all different ways, and then I'll very, very lightly give it a soft blend without pushing too hard at all. So again, barely touching the canvas, guys, and that's how you'll get that really soft airbrushed kind of pastel look. And so right over here, I just decided to have fun and experiment with this brush and see how well it would work if I wanted to create some really big flower petals. I know that I'm going to blend over this and lose this, but sometimes it's fun to experiment, and you can get away with it when your paint is wet and you go over it again right away. But yeah, it would work for creating some large flower petals, so maybe in a future video you'll see me using that. I'm going to be working on my little crescent moon here. Liner brush, bit of white, and just a little bit of turquoise just to tint it slightly. With a little flat brush here, I'm going to soften those edges and sort of just fine tune the shape a little bit more. And each time I'm doing this, I'm pulling off a little bit of paint, so I'm going to use that to scumble around and make it look like nebula or little clouds, maybe northern lights. I don't know, I just love I get lost in painting skies, magical looking skies. So I've got a little bit more of my pink that I'm just going to add in and around here and slightly overlap and layer just to create some more colors. Okay, with a little bit of turquoise and white now, I'm going to add a little bit more highlights up here, and I'm kind of pushing and twirling with my brush, pushing and turning over to create little peaks on my clouds. And then what I'm going to do is pull and flick diagonally. It can be sun rays, or in this case, it ended up looking just like northern lights. So I was really happy with this, and it's not sped up. I'm doing this super fast. It's easier and more effective to do it really quickly like that without hesitation. Okay, I've got another number 30 Filbert brush here, and I'm taking my neon pink, a little bit of white, using just the tip of my brush here in an upward motion, creating little soft scoops and little circles. And do a little bit more to the sky and the background here before I start to come in with my birdhouse. I'm going to add a little bit of white to my brush, and you can see how dry it is. This gives it a powdery dry brush effect, which is really nice for those transparent areas that you want to have. And then I'm going to go into my light purple color that I made with my ultramarine blue and my light purple. It's a really pretty color here, so I'm going to just add a little bit in here, scumble in and around. I felt like I needed a little bit more shadow in between all of the brightness there, so I'm going to come in here and then balance the bottom of this out by adding a bit of white to my brush, and that's going to give me that powdery blue, kind of a lilac-y color. So now that my crescent moon is pretty much all dry, I can come over carefully and re-brighten that, re-highlight that with just a little bit of white. I'm going to take my old toothbrush here with water and white paint and pull and flick to create a beautiful star effect in this sky. I'm going to leave some of these areas that look kind of drippy, and I'm going to use them to just kind of push and tap so that I get some more of a glowy look and create a little bit more magic back here. So don't worry, don't freak out if you get those little drips and, you know, kind of messy looking stars. Sometimes when you use a paintbrush or a toothbrush to create the spray effect, you can get almost like little lines and they look messy, but it can still turn into something beautiful. So don't worry, guys, Just kind of make lemonade out of lemons in your paintings. Happy little accidents. Always remember what Bob Ross used to say. I think of that. I hear his voice in my head when I'm working on my painting still to this day. So I've got my luminous rose now and a filbert brush, or a little flat brush, I think. And the luminous rose is very close to magenta or a quinacridone violet, just in case you don't have this. It is one of the Holbein colors. It's a beautiful shade. I love this. And, you know, I love the way it dries too, because it almost has a velvety finish to it. Not even matte. It's more of like it looks like suede or velvet. It's just gorgeous. So I really want to use this luminous rose here. Simple, basic, very easy birdhouse with that little upside down V for the top and like a rectangle, a little line underneath that comes out a little bit wider on either side, and then just a line for the bottom that holds it and stakes it into the ground. So I'm going to add some shadows by taking blue, maybe a little bit of black, just to add some shadows. You'll see when I do that. And then I'll add a little oval or a circle just inside. So I've got a little bit of black here. Doesn't matter what black you use, but if you're curious, I'm just using, I kind of alternate. I've got a Mars black that I like to use, and then I just have like a cheap craft black paint that I like, because it isn't so thick, and I can easily pull and drag for my shadows and lines wherever I need to with it. So I'm just going to go over the stake here where it'll be a little bit more in silhouette and shadow. So you can see just add a simple little oval or egg shape there for the little opening for our little birds. And then a shadow inside the roof line, and then pull gently without pushing too hard to indicate little lines in the wood, but you really don't have to do that. It's just, if you want to, you can. Another brush that would work really good for, or really well for that, is the rake brush. Either, I think the Filbert rake brush would work really well. And then I'm going to start just dotting and dabbing for the centers of my sunflowers. Again, very random, not hesitating, not stopping to think about placement. I want this to look really wild and natural and fun. So that's the best way to do it, is to just go for it, guys. And you know, when you look at sunflowers, sometimes they're curving over because they're so heavy. So give some of those stems a little bit of a round top to them, like they're leaning or curling over just a little bit. So I'm going to start the shadow lines first, very loosely. I want this to feel whimsical. That is in the title of this painting, so I don't want to do this too carefully. I want it to feel free and fun. And I'm going to come in and do some lower ones to create some distance and perspective in the painting. So there's like a big field that goes down and back further off into the distance. I'll dab a little bit down here in the bottom to create some more shadow and depth. Just going to keep going here, adding a few little dabs on either side of those big tall stems for some leaves. So it is important to do this dark first, so we have this nice shadow base to build up from. And I'm going to be using a few different colors. I'll show you here in just a minute. One of them is going to be yellow ochre. So I'm going to be using yellow ochre to begin the base. And before I do that, I've got a tiny little cute mop brush here. This is from the makeup series of brushes that I get on Amazon. I'll try to remember to leave a link below for you guys if you don't have these yet. And I've got burnt sienna, so I'm just going to tap in very lightly. I don't want it to be solid. I want it to look like all those little seeds on the inside, the center of those flowers, so you can still see black in between, but they are far away enough that you don't have to worry too much about too much detail, right guys? So don't worry about that. And then I just want to take a little bit of my yellow ochre and maybe tap a bit of that in there too. It's only if you want to. It's really not that necessary, but if you want to have a bit more of a highlight And 3D look to the centers, you can add a bit of yellow ochre over top of that burnt sienna that's over top of the black. I've got a round brush now, and I'm just gonna simply and really have fun with this, pull and twirl and make all these petals look like they're flowing and curling over, just with my yellow ochre. So this is gonna be the first color after adding that thin layer of black. So I'll do this all over, making all of them different. Think of how they grow wild. Some turn to the side, some are facing the other way, some of them are looking right at us, and some are in the distance. So we're just going to do pretty much just little blobs of that yellow ochre. So think about it that way. You don't see everything in full focus when you're looking at when you have a view of something, right? So you want to have some that are going to be a little bit more in detail and some that are just going to look like little blurry blobs. Okay, so now I'm ready for the next step. I'm going to take my lemon yellow with a little bit of blue and make green. And I'm going to add a little bit of this to the stems, the foreground, the leaves, and then I'll start to work up to adding more color and highlight to all the flowers. So I'll be taking a little bit of all three colors, neon orange, lemon yellow, and a little bit of that yellow ochre. I want to take all three, not blend them too much, otherwise I'll lose that natural look. So when you take all three colors at once without blending them, or in general any more than one color, and you just kind of take a scoop of each one and go directly to the painting with that and make brush strokes, you're getting instant shadows and highlights. So that's why it's really important, and it's a really, really effective technique. So don't think about over blending and mixing too much on your palette. Try to do it naturally and organically. Let it do it on its own on the canvas, and your paintings will look way, way more realistic. So I'm just going to add a little bit more black and burnt sienna to the center of these flowers, and then come in now with my round brush that's clean, white, neon orange, and yellow. I'm going to turn my brush different ways. Sometimes I'm going to work from the center out, and sometimes I'm going to work from the end of the petal towards the center of the flower. This way they're always going to look different. And when I run out of paint, of course, I'm going to load that brush back up. I'm using a lot of paint for these because I want them to be thick and almost like impasto looking. So there's going to be a texture to the canvas, the painting, once it dries. And don't forget to overlap your petals. This way they look more real, because they're not going to all be spaced out perfectly. They overlap one another as they come out. And so sometimes you want to use, to get that look, that shadow and highlight look. Sometimes you're going to pick up a little bit more white, and sometimes you're going to just use a little bit more of your colors. So I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to do all the flowers the same way. I'm going to let you guys just sit back and watch this and enjoy this, and I'll be back to chat in a few minutes. So we've got quite a bit done here. I love the combination of these yellows against all the purples in the sky and that birdhouse. I love that. I just love that combination. I'm going to come in now and add a little bit more to the center of the flowers. Maybe, I kind of went over with some of the petals just to have that balance. So just a little bit of black, burnt sienna again. And then I'm going to start to make sort of a green gold color. If I don't use just straight gold, green gold, I can make it by taking a bit of black and lemon yellow. So that's a really nice color to use. It gives you kind of, well, green gold, also like an olive green. It kind of looks like an olive green. And that's a really nice balance in this painting because we have so many pretty colors that this muted, sort of a muddy green color works really, really well, and it will enhance all those pretty colors. I don't know why, but it just really does. So I'm going to use that for some of the green foliage, stems, and leaves in the foreground for these sunflowers. Okay, as I wrap up the green gold color down here in the foliage, I'm going to wash my brush out and take white with some turquoise. It's a bright aqua green, in case you guys are wondering. It's by Liquitex Basics, and I'm just going to use the tip mostly here to create those little bubble cloud peak effects, and then I'm going to use the rest of the paint and make slanted lines and pull and flick for some more of those little rays or neon lights. So here, dust side to side, scumble side to side, do it quickly for a more natural look. It's way easier to do that than to try to do one at a time. I'll create a few more little wiggles and squiggles in here. And I'm also going to add turquoise, bits of turquoise in the foreground, so we have all sorts of warmth and cool tones to our foliage, and all that in the foreground. So it just is a harmony of colors, and it's a really nice balance. I'm just going to steady my finger there on the canvas where it's dry and kind of just tap in with the tip of my brush straight up and down for some more little stars, and then soften with my finger. So just little scoops of turquoise here and there, being really messy and random about it. So this just gives us those nice, cool, shiny tones to and shadows to some of the leaves, you know, when it's kind of dusk out and there's a bit of a shine from the moon. It's kind of a cool minty color like that. So that's what I was going for here. And also I just really like all the colors together, so I felt like I needed to add a little hint of turquoise in here before I end this painting. So this is just about done. I'm adding the finishing touches now, and I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today. I'm really happy I got to share this with you. Can't wait to see your versions up on the Facebook group. Thanks to all my patrons. Without you guys, I couldn't be taking the time to create all these videos for you. So thank you so much. I want to wish you guys happy painting. Have a wonderful day. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Tap that bell. And give this video a like, leave a comment. It really helps my channel go out into the algorithm so more and more people can learn from my videos and get a chance to see them. See you next time, everybody. Take care.